and welcome to this week's episode of TV POV. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Jen.
A bit of a later news week this week, so that'll give us a little bit of time for some special goodies a bit later on. So why don't we get right into the past week's headlines?
Let's start with some cancellations. And the first one relates to something we were talking about during our comedy special last week. One of my favorite new TV comedies, Selfie, was officially canceled last week, which doesn't really come as a surprise. I said last week I knew I was going to lose it. And I did. It's gone. Although they are still airing, I believe, the episodes they have, or at least I know they aired some after the cancellation announcement. So, but they weren't going to be making any more. It is over. So that's unfortunate for those of us who thought it was starting to show some real potential.
There were quite a few. Right after we recorded that, all of a sudden a lot of TV critics and journalists started saying, hey, you know what actually got better was Selfie. And then once it got canceled, people were like, well, you should have been watching it. So, I don't know.
It's funny. I feel like there's a bit of a hypocrisy at the TV lovers and TV critic community, because we often start off like, those are the guys that were out there giving it like terrible ratings, terrible reviews, I should say, when it first premiered, which in turn, you know, also makes people not want to tune in. And then they come back, watch some later, like, how come you guys aren't smart enough to get this? This is a really good show. But, you know, it was always had an uphill battle with the impression that people had of it just on its name and on what the very loose concept was about. So yeah.
Another cancellation comes from TNT. After 4 seasons, Franklin and Bash has been given the axe.
Yes.
This is a show that I never got into. So, but I do know it had a pretty passionate following.
Yeah. So. Apparently it started off with higher ratings and they've kind of dived a little bit. And it's one that I was never really compelled to watch. I'm sure it probably would have been a pretty easy watch. And I do really like Breckenmeyer, and I have a fondness for Mark Paul Gosselaar, just because, you know, come on. Say by the
Zach Morris.
Right. But yes, 4 seasons, not a bad run for a show. But
yeah, that's pretty good these days.
In better news, depending on how you look at it, this is shows that are getting picked up for a full season. The one full season pickup we got this week was from ABC's Forever.
Really?
Yes. I said it's got good news depending on how you look at it. I look at it as pretty much a terrible idea. I actually did a Check the Remote segment for a TV POV website, so if you want, you can still check that out to see why I think it's terrible news. It's up on watchtvpov.com. But this was a show that I just thought had such a hokey premise. It's about this guy who is a coroner and for some reason can never die, and also keeps getting into crazy accidents and dying every week and coming back to life. So,
and dying involves him being naked when he comes back.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what I took away.
And in water, he wakes up in water naked. I don't believe, at least I stopped watching after the first couple episodes. They had not explained that at that point. I don't think they've explained it yet. Please, somebody let me know what.
So he's a Cylon.
Cylon coroner. I don't know.
Yeah. We've got some renewals that have come down the pipeline. Showtime has picked up Homeland for a 5th season, and newcomer The Affair is getting a 2nd season already. So Homeland's been still doing okay in the ratings. Probably not doing quite as well critically as it did in earlier seasons.
Yeah.
But it's taken an interesting turn recently.
I haven't watched it, but all I've been hearing, I've only seen season 1, and I love season 1, but it's been interesting listening to the debate going on as to whether it's a good or a terrible show. People seem to be very divided on that show.
Yeah, it is. It's a very divisive show. I think what they're doing really well this year is they're showing the spycraft aspect of it a lot more interestingly, and developing some other characters that we usually don't. I mean, we'll see some of, but we're seeing more of. So I've liked that angle to it this year. And the affair, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which you were totally enamored with the storytelling aspect.
I'm very, very excited to see this get a second season. Like I said, it seems like it would just be kind of an average show, and for some reason, I just fell in love with their storytelling, and I'm really happy that they're gonna keep developing that one. I'm very excited, but for sure. Another renewal from Canada is that Saving Hope, the CTV series, is getting a 4th season of, I believe, 18 episodes. No surprise for this one. This is the most watched original drama in Canada. The ratings are huge for this one, and I quite enjoy it. So
I have been in love with this season. It's one of those shows that when it first started, I kind of fell off, and then I marathoned all of it over the summer and absolutely fell in love with the characters. And this season has been, I hate to use the word game changer, but it has been.
Ooh.
And it's been really, really, really neat premise. Some of the characters that we've always wondered what makes them tick, finding out what that is. A lot of tension, the whole, I mean, I'm usually not a fan of love triangles, but this one is pretty interesting. So I'm excited that it's going to get more.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're in the States, Ion picked up the first 3 seasons. I believe they haven't aired season 3, which is the current season, yet. They'll probably pick up the 4th season, I'm assuming, so that's where you can check it out if you are in the States.
Yeah, and this first season did air in the US because it was originally NBC and CTV.
Yes.
And it's been a while since they've had any.
Yeah, it didn't do well for them, did phenomenally well for CTV, so they kept making it on their own, which is great that they were able to do that. I know sometimes I worry about those co-productions because sometimes if the stateside, it doesn't do well in the States, the Canadians can't afford to keep making the show, as what happened with Combat Hospital, which was an insanely huge hit in Canada, but it was such an expensive show and it didn't do well on ABC. AMC renewed Hell on Wheels for a 5th season, but with the caveat that it's also the final season. I believe the episode, like usually they get about a 10 episode order per season for that show. They have 13, but of course, as AMC likes to do, those 13 will be split in half, although that's a little weird because you can't split 13 in half, now that I think about it. We'll see, maybe it's only 6 and 7. You'd think they just would have gone ahead with 14.
Yeah.
But they're going to split them in half and air half a year later. I mean, I'm getting a little sick of that device that AMC has used now with mega hit Breaking Bad and critical darling Mad Men, which we still have yet to see the second half of.
Yeah, that's in the new year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it worked with Breaking Bad because Breaking Bad is so intense and so exciting that it's a little bit like The Walking Dead with just a little bit of a longer wait. So you really lived through those episodes, and I didn't, the wait didn't kill me because I jumped right back in and it was really exciting. But with a show like Mad Men that is such a slow burn, it's like building up for 7 episodes to a kind of excitement and come back a year later. I have not watched Hell on Wheels either. I know that a lot of my guy friends really like it. It's kind of testosterone driven.
I know quite a few, like I have quite a few girlfriends that are really into it.
Yeah.
I watched most of the first season and found it, I'm not a big fan of the frontier stories.
Yeah.
So it lost me. Although I did hear that season 2 became less about that and became a little more, I think when they bring in a little more of the railroad story, it gets better.
Yeah.
But I've never gone back to it.
Well, it'll be ending, it's announced that it's ending this year. It won't end until like 2 years from now.
Yeah. We've got some returns that I'm particularly excited about. The Fosters and Chasing Life return to ABC Family on Monday, January 19th.
Ooh, so excited.
The Fosters, how can you not love that family?
I know.
I mean, as we discussed previously, just no more of the Brawley stuff. But
Callie and Brandon, yeah. You're right. I don't think it's necessary. I don't hate them as a couple chemistry-wise, but I just don't think that storyline is is necessary. I think they're
Yeah.
better than that. I think the show is better than that.
Exactly.
And I think that there's other interesting things they can do without sort of making it a star-crossed romance between teens who want you but can't because they're related but not really, you know, like that.
So this is basically the prequel to the series we discussed last week
Billy
with
and
Adam
Billy.
Brody.
Yeah, basically.
I think that that premise is, in a lot of ways, to me it just feels like they're pandering to the fans that are rooting for that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of fans that's what they want to see.
They want to see Hallie and
And
Brandon.
I'm like, nah, you know what? It's for how many strides they've made with this series. The acting is phenomenal.
Yes.
The writing is phenomenal. That's probably the only weak link. The really good thing is we don't have to wait until January to see either of these because there are Christmas specials
Yes.
in December.
Yeah, which
Yay.
is really kind of cool. Some development news and pickups this week, and the first one is yet another movie to TV, a subject we keep talking about on this show. But this one should actually excite a lot of people. It has a lot of fans. Evil Dead is getting a TV series on Starz. And what's even better is that Sam Raimi is going to be executive producing, and Bruce Campbell will be reprising his role as Ash.
Groovy.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this.
I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I have not seen Evil Dead, and so I can't count myself a fan or even anyone who has any amount of knowledge on this, but of course I'm aware that it's got its insane amounts of cult fans. So
People have been waiting for either another film. I think this is even more satisfying.
Yeah.
This is like the pioneer in the horror comedy genre. This is it, and so many great things have happened from it. Evil Dead the musical, which is, if you've never had a chance to see it, you must check it out.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Bruce Campbell is legendary in that world.
Yeah.
And to be reprising the character that, you know, kind of made his name, I think that's pretty cool. It's a bold move for Starz too. They haven't really done much of the horror stuff. So
no. Although they do know about blood and guts.
Yes.
Spartacus.
yeah.
As Spartacus Blood and Sand, I used to just call Spartacus Blood and More Blood. Yeah, there was a lot of blood. So this is funny blood, but at least they can reuse all of their old special effects or whatever. So
It's always awesome when someone has a chainsaw for a hand.
yeah. If it can't be scissors.
Yeah.
As we all know, Amazon always puts a bunch of pilots forward and then lets the viewers or the ratings of these pilots kind of decide which ones they will go forward with. So they've announced 7 for 2015, which is a whole lot, but 2 that I found really interesting because they sort of gave the basic premise of all of these 7 that they're going to be putting into production. One is called The Man in the High Castle, which is based on a Philip K. Dick novel that won a Hugo Award. So that's some nice pedigree there because he always has fantastic stories. And it's about what would happen if the Allies had actually lost World War II.
Oh.
Which is kind of everyone's favorite what if history question, right? So this takes place 20 years after World War II, in which the world is divided between the 2 Axis powers, Germany and Japan.
Wow.
Kind of makes me want to read this book.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, so this is one of the ones they're putting into development, which I think sounds really interesting. And another one is called Point of Honor, and it's written by Carlton Cuse, who is doing everything.
Who doesn't sleep?
I know, it's like, the man is in his 50s, take a break. I mean, no, don't take a break. We love your stuff. It's just, you know, maybe he deserves a break, I think.
It's like everything lately is Carlton Cuse, Greg Berlanti,
Yeah.
Shonda Rhimes.
I know, it's wow.
Yeah.
God. So this one's called Point of Honor, and it's a Civil War drama about a guy who fights against the injustice and frees his own slaves and leaves his sisters to run a plantation while he goes to sort of defend the South, but not that part of the South. So he's a Southern guy who believes in the South, but not slavery.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So that's just 2 of them. You can read about them all online. There's 7 in total. And I really like this idea, I always have, of Amazon letting people see these pilots and then putting into full production the ones that do the best. I mean, excited to check all those out. Especially excited if Amazon would please, 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 for the billionth time, bring Amazon Prime and Amazon Fire TV to Canada.
Yes, please.
Yes.
We need to see Transparent.
Yes,
It's
we do.
imperative that we see Transparent.
It's pretty important.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter.
Yep.
I'm the Televixen. She's Kit Couch Potato. Let us know how we can watch.
Yeah.
We will help you spread the word across Canada if you make this happen.
Absolutely.
Arrow, which we know earlier this season, at the beginning of the season,
Yeah.
we lost our beloved Black Canary, Sarah Lance.
Yes.
I believe the words I yelled at my television when it happened was, "You killed the wrong sister." But I'm going to keep an open mind. What they released earlier today were the first images of Katie Cassidy's Laurel Lance in full Black Canary costume.
Yeah.
Now, yes, I love Katie lots. She was amazing as Sarah. In the little time that she was on the show, she made such a huge impact.
Yeah.
And it was hard to see her gone, although I kind of suspected something would happen all along, especially because Black Canary all along has been Laurel Lance.
Yeah.
At the same time, Laurel has kind of evolved. Like, last season, Laurel annoyed
So
the hell out of me.
Whiny. Whine.
I kind of like that her sister's death has motivated her to...
Yeah.
She doesn't want to just be on the sideline. She wants to be in the middle of it all. She looks pretty badass in the uniform, too. And at Comic-Con back in the summer, although they didn't give us specifics, the writers and executive producers said that a couple of the things they were most excited about this coming season was Thea and Laurel. So I'm guessing that this is what they... And if they're excited about it, I'm guessing it's going to be something pretty good.
I think it might be a case of them really not maybe structuring that character and writing that character the way it needs to be written from the beginning. That's not to say they can't come back from that. But I think part of it is as they go, they may have learned that they missed an opportunity to really make people fall in love with Laurel from the beginning.
Yeah.
And not necessarily make her always likable, because you can love characters that aren't likable. But unfortunately, there were a lot of arcs that involved her that were grating and annoying and just fell flat. It's not to say that this storyline can't become good and that I can't become excited eventually for this, but I do feel like if Laurel had been handled differently from the beginning, at this point I'd be much more excited to see this finally happen.
I'm curious to see how it's all going to shape up. I'm still not over losing Sarah though.
Yeah.
So, but Katie Cassidy, you look pretty kick-ass in that costume. And I'm looking forward to seeing you kick ass in that costume.
Yes, that's the important thing, because people have to kick ass on Arrow.
Yeah. So we've got some casting. Not a heck of a lot happened over the past week, but there's a couple that we were excited about. Do you want to start us off?
I did, yes. James Wolk, who I know, such a cute, lovable actor, and a good actor.
So cute.
Good actor. I first fell in love with him in the very few episodes of Lone Star that we were
Oh my god,
allowed.
that show was
I
unbelievable.
know. The very few episodes we were allowed to watch before they yanked it unceremoniously off the air. And then he was kind of the bright spot of the Sarah Michelle Gellar, Robin Williams sitcom last season.
The Crazy Ones.
Yes. Great in that. So he has been cast in the lead in a CBS pilot called Zoo, which is based on a James Patterson novel. But this is a very dark, I wouldn't say dark, but definitely serious role. And the subject, I've never read this book. It's very horror-like. So he is a zoologist who works in Africa, does safaris and things like that, and he starts to notice the animals having strange behavior and getting violent towards humans in a way that they don't normally do. We hear that this is happening all over the planet, that animals are turning violent, and so he has to try to work with people. I know, doesn't this like the plot of a like Jaws or like something?
Sounds kind of neat.
So he has to try to figure out what's happening before humanity is at stake.
As long as there's not an ape named Caesar, I'm good with it.
Did you not like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?
I'm not really a big fan of any of the Planet of the Apes in any century.
Okay, fair enough. But just an interesting role for him because his persona is kind of charming and sometimes goofy, but always sort of suave and, you know.
Also, a bit of a darker one for CBS, which is kind of bold.
And serialized for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. I was excited about a little casting tidbit that came through. WGN America, they have another original series that they're working on.
Yes.
It was originally called Titans, but they've recently changed the name to Outsiders. And they have cast Thomas M. Wright in the lead role. Now, if you don't recognize that name, you might know him from the recently canceled The Bridge. He played Linder,
yes.
and was just, he did such a fantastic job in that role. The only person who did better on that show to me was Matthew Lillard, who, can someone please cast him on something ASAP again, because he needs to be on more TV. But yeah, so in a lead role rather than, you know, just kind of a smaller but yet significant role that he had, another dramatic turn. And also, you know, WGN America's churning out some really, really cool stuff. I mean, they started it off with the supernatural world of Salem, and then went into a period piece, like a historical drama with Manhattan, and now this one sounds like another good one. So I'm excited for him and to see more of him, because he did make such a good impression in The Bridge.
So this week, you know, there weren't a lot of show premieres. We were trying to decide what we felt compelled to talk about, and the one thing that kept coming up is we're both huge fans of Parenthood. You've heard us talk about this before. And this season has had one storyline that has just consistently broken both of our hearts. And if you're watching it, all of yours too. And if you're not, watch it, have your heart broken. It's worth it. And that is the Joel and Julia storyline. So we decided to do an extended Pass the Tissue segment on Joel and Julia on Parenthood.
I know. They are ripping my heart out this season.
They really are. First of all, to give a little bit of background of where they started off this season. Last season, there was a little bit of tension between them. Julia had, I guess, what you would call a flirtation that turned into one kiss with the guy who played Roy on The Office. Can't remember his name right now. Doesn't matter. He's not important. Joel was upset, understandably, but then also overreacted. They ended up the season separated. Julia sort of begging Joel to fight for her, and him not really being able to bring himself to do that. We picked up this year. They were still apart. There was a little bit of a, not flash forward, just a time jump in this season, and they are living apart, and they are now preparing to sign divorce papers.
Julia has also found a new job, which kind of transpired at the end of last season.
Yes.
A lot of where the issues came up with their marriage, Julia was always the kind of the breadwinner in the family. She was the career person. She was the successful lawyer. Joel stayed at home with Sydney.
Yeah.
And then when she lost her job when they adopted Victor.
She quit. Yeah.
She quit. And then Joel ended up, you know, taking the reins and getting a job and becoming quite successful, but also started neglecting his family, kind of in a different way than Julia was doing it. Like, even though Julia was working all the time, she was still kind of active, whereas Joel was a little more separated. I think
That's
to me it looked that way.
Because I didn't feel that way. I actually felt that part of it, I don't want to assign blame. There's no blame.
Yeah. No.
But I think for me, what I felt was that Julia had a harder time adjusting to being at home than Joel did. We saw Joel struggle with it a little over the years. You know, this idea that he didn't want he'd want his life to be about more than just his kids, and he wanted some sort of creative fulfillment and career fulfillment beyond that. But he was also very happy being at home, and I think Julia thought she would be, but she really struggled with that. And I think there was a lot of resentment from Joel, because he was like, I did this for years and you can't get through you know, a year like this when you aren't feeling connected to your partner. Things just go downhill, and we saw that happen to them.
But when we came back with this season, the job she had interviewed for with her with an old college boyfriend had worked out. They were now in a relationship, which seemed to make her so happy, and to see her happy and a smile on her face was a nice change. And you know, sometimes divorce is a good thing. And I was almost thinking that this was the route they were going to take, that, you know, that chapter was closed.
There's been some very standout scenes with this couple. So they had gone to sign divorce papers, they'd gone to finish their mediation. They get into the elevator and they just instinctively grabbed each other's hands. They didn't have to say anything, and then she started to cry and she just turned to him and they just held each other in this elevator before parting ways. And it's like, it seems so realistic to me, that heartbreak of when something that you loved so much, even if you're not sure if you love it anymore, is finally going to be over. It's hard to describe how devastating that is, and just that they were taking that moment to like accept that, and to really give into that feeling of how tragic and horrible is it that we're at this place now.
And to me, that scene when it first happened, it was like, okay, this is their goodbye. You know, this is them saying goodbye.
I wasn't sure where they were gonna go with that.
But when Joel went to visit Zeke, and they have, you know, their little get together, and Joel's like, well, this is me coming to say goodbye to you. That's where I lost it. Because, oh my God, I'm going to start crying.
That is one of the most,
Zeke is like, you mean you're just giving up? You're not going to fight for your wife and your kids? And I'm like, oh my God. And I lost it. I was ugly crying, which I'm reprising a little bit now. I was like the ugly sobbing crying. And then they just sent it into a tailspin from there. Oh my God, look at me. Oh.
Listen, you need a moment.
Pass the tissue.
I know. But you know what got me about that scene too? I mean, yes, he needed a kick in the pants, and I think Joel felt like it was too little too late. He sort of felt like, I can't come back here now and put this out there when I didn't do it when she asked me to. But with Zeke saying, you know, what are you doing? Don't give up, fight for her. That's when Joel decided that he was going to go fight for her, and he did in fact go to her door and say he wanted another chance. He wanted to make their marriage work. I think the other aspect of this Joel Julia storyline that has really broken me up is that it's not just Joel and Julia, it's Joel and Julia's family. And that's, I think, what really gets it for me, because it's this idea that he didn't just marry her, he married her family, and he got Zeke as a role model and a father figure, and he got the entire crazy Braverman clan, and you can see it in their faces every time this season he's been called in to do something or involved in some way, how happy they are to have him back. He's a member of that family, and the fact that he had to go over to Zeke's house and say, and he knew that you can't stay married to someone's family after you're not married to them anymore, even if they love you. And so he had to sit down to Zeke and say that he was there to say goodbye. That killed me, not even just from the perspective of him and his wife, but from him sitting down from someone who for, I don't know exactly how long we've been married, but it's at least 10 years, to sit down to that person and say, I have to say goodbye to you. It's just, there's so many levels to the breakdown of this marriage, and that really kills me, and I love how Parenthood has handled that. I really, really do. I think it's been so realistic, so emotional, and with no villains, with no blame. Everyone has a different side, and it's all understandable. And that's what makes it so gut-wrenching to watch, is because it isn't easy. You just feel awful all around. You really, that's what it is. You feel awful for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And that's life.
Yeah. All I know is that, as we know, it's almost at its end. Parenthood's almost over. The Bravermans are probably going up there as one of the best TV families ever.
Oh my God, yes.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. And let me just say that Sam Yeager and Erica Christensen deserve all of the applause in the world for their performances this season. Like, my God, you two are nailing it out of the park, and it's been such a difficult, but such a so compelling to watch.
It's satisfying. It's emotionally satisfying while it tears you to shreds.
Yeah. You guys ripped out my heart last week and stomped on it a bit and then ripped it up, and that's exactly how I felt afterward.
So, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? My heart is hoping so desperately that it works out. I don't know how you're feeling.
The romantic in me wants it to work out. The practical person is thinking, well, maybe they'll get together, but we'll never see if they end up splitting up anyway once the kids have gone off to college, because the show's gonna end. So I'm thinking beyond the show being over.
My God, that is practical shit.
So, yes, I would love to see them reconcile. I'd love to see them back together. But then at the same time, the back of my mind, I'm like, how long is this going to last?
It's dark.
Yeah.
It's tough for me because I decided, I wasn't sure before, I decided I do want them to get back together. I really passionately want them to get back together. But if I take myself out of it and my desires out of it as a passionate viewer, when I think about what should happen from a writing perspective, I almost feel like in a show about family and marriage, a major divorce storyline, maybe out of all the people we started with, there should be one couple that's divorced at the end. I think it could work either way, and I'm definitely really invested in what happens, which I think is what matters.
Yeah.
For sure.
So on that happy note,
sunshine! Cheers, guys!
I think that I'm gonna go drink a bottle of wine and drown my sorrows and prepare for the next episode of Parenthood, which I'm sure will kill us both.
Yeah.
We've got some fun segments though coming up. You should check out watchtvpov.com.
Yeah.
Jen has had a couple up over the past week. And in case you missed it segment.
Yeah, of MTV's Finding Carter.
Yeah.
And another Pass the Tissue, although not quite as sad, for Jane the Virgin, which manages to be hysterical and heartbreaking at the same time. So those are the two I have up so far. Expect more in the next week.
Yes.
WatchTVPOV.com.
And if you want to find us on Twitter, I'm the Televixen.
And I'm Kit Couch Potato.
We will see you guys next week for another episode. Take care.
Bye.